Hi, so now we're going to talk about intermediate lifting strategies, okay? So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, have you been training for a while and now got stuck, okay? So first things first, I just want to say this is not a insult or derogative term in saying that you might not be intermediate, okay? If you're training and you're making progress, awesome. Okay? Doesn't matter if you're a beginner, doesn't matter if you're a novice, doesn't matter if you're intermediate or whatever. If you're training and you're making progress, wicked, right? You're getting what you want. End of. Okay? But we need some qualification, because generally what happens is when people first train, they will get results, because the leap from nothing to something is enormous on the body and things happen. But after a while, progress can stall. It can stop, despite the fact that you want it to. Okay? So let's look at some strategies that will help. But first of all, we need to qualify intermediate, okay? So, first of all, we need to look at, are you consistent? Are you training lifting multiple times a week, every week? If you're not, then you're not consistent, okay? So you don't qualify as intermediate, right? Are you training hard? Are you putting effort in, okay? You know, our set's gone to quite a lot of discomfort, close to failure or to failure, depending on how you're training, what you're training. There needs to be effort. If there's no effort, then again, you're not intermediate, right? Skill. Are your movements fairly consistent in how they look? Do your reps look fairly similar? If your reps are all over the place with whatever you're doing, okay, again, probably not intermediate, and you need to look at that, okay? And progress. Are you actually trying to get better? Are you measuring training? Are you looking at ways to push things forward? Like, again, if you're not doing all of this, you're not intermediate, okay? So what we're looking at here is, if you are doing all of this, you're consistent, you're putting in effort, your reps, you've got a fairly good amount of coordination, and you're really trying to make progress, but you're not making progress, now let's look at some strategies that can help, okay? By the way, these are just some ideas that you can try and implement, right? I'm not saying it's the be-all and end-all. Okay, so, first thing you can try is exercise selection, okay? And what I mean by that is swapping things out. What people tend to do is they'll train for a while in movements, okay, and then things will stop, okay? So one of the things that you can do to help create focus, right, to stop you feeling burnt out or to create new adaptation is to have exercises that you swap back and forth, okay? So at an intermediate level, I would say you could probably swap every 4 weeks or every month, okay? So have two groups of exercises. Have group A and have group B. Okay, you do group A exercises. Let's say, just for example, you're doing bench press with a barbell, right? You do that for 4 weeks or a month, okay? Then, the next 4 weeks or 5 weeks or a month, you swap over and you do dumbbell bench press instead of barbell bench press. And what you do is you try and progress that one exercise over that period of time, then you swap to the second exercise, try and progress that exercise. But then what you do is when you finish that second exercise, you go back to the first exercise. The reason for this is there is some anecdotal evidence that in intermediate lifters, the strength in a particular exercise doesn't drop off for quite some time. So you could take advantage of that by training it for a bit and then not training it and putting that energy into something else that may cause new adaptation. Then when you go back to the original exercise, you haven't lost any of the strength. And indeed, another block may then show progress, and you can keep leapfrogging back and forth between exercises. Okay? So give that a try. Obviously, if you're a beginner, I don't recommend this, because you want to have exercises in more consistently just for the skill component. Okay? Coordination can take far longer than 4 weeks. And if you're advanced, that also might not work, because you might need a longer period of time on one exercise to create the adaptations that you require, because once the stimulus has been bedded in, it can take a lot longer. Okay? But for an intermediate, give it a try. Okay? Next thing we can look at. Are you training to failure or not? Now, this is the thing, neither of these things are bad. It's just one of those things that what you can do is you can make a decision. Say, like, again, you do a block of like 4 or 5 weeks or a month, okay, where you decide, I am going to train to failure, right? So you train to the point where the muscle can no longer concentrically finish the rep, okay? That's training to failure. You can go degrees into failure, like you can have assisted reps, you can have partial reps, lengthened partials, so on and so forth, okay? But just take an exercise to failure is a certain degree of effort, okay? Now, this can be a good thing for a lot of people, because most people have no idea where failure lies. They may think, oh yeah, I probably would have failed the next rep. But if they'd really been pushed, they'd had someone like me going, ah, right? They might have got another 10 reps. I've seen this happen. Lots. Okay? So training to failure can be really good because it can actually give you an idea of effort. Are you actually training hard? Okay? But training to failure is also very hard on recovery, it can be very hard on the body, it can be very hard on the mind. And when you train to failure, you're going to have certain considerations, like you're not going to do as many sets. Okay? Training to failure is very, very tough. Okay? So a good thing might be then that, say, like, again, those blocks, 4 to 5 weeks or a month, for 1 month you train to failure, right? And then the next month you deliberately don't train to failure. You maybe get your effort to the point where the bar speed slows down quite significantly, or you train to what's known as reps in reserves and you leave 1 rep in reserve, but you do not deliberately go to failure for that entire month, okay? Then you go back to failure training. Now, what is the main difference with these things apart from the actual failure itself? When you train to failure, you basically achieve a peak in what's called mechanical tension, okay, where the muscle is trying to create movement, but it no longer can. However, that is not peak force. Peak force is while the bar is still moving relatively quickly. Now, force adaptations create neural adaptations for increased strength and increased load on the bar. So not training to failure is generally better for strength, whereas training to failure is generally better for hypertrophy, right? Muscle growth, because those are 2 different mechanisms and triggers. Alternating between the 2 can give you, say if you stalled in your training, it may be that you need to actually focus a bit more on muscle size. Or it may be that you need to focus on actually creating a stimulus that makes you get stronger so you can now change the load on the exercises to keep on stimulating the body. So changing your focus, 1 month of failure, 1 month of no failure, back and forth, can be really good for achieving those different adaptations, but also changing up your training, giving you a new focus, making things fresh and exciting, worth a try. Final thing, okay? So we can look at the eccentric rep speed. The eccentric is the lowering part of the exercise, generally, otherwise known as the lengthening, okay? So if you're doing a bench press, right, the bit where the bar is coming towards you, the chest is lengthening, the triceps are lengthening under tension, that's the eccentric part, okay? So having a focus on what the eccentric speed is doing also can change that training block considerably. Again, if you want to go deliberately slow on the eccentric, you are probably going to do less reps per set because it's more fatiguing, right? But it should introduce more mechanical tension to the muscle and therefore is more of a hypertrophy stimulus, right? However, if you go for a faster eccentric rep speed, okay, you create more force, which in turn can create a higher neural stimulus for strength and more weight on the exercise, as long as you're safe. Do it properly, okay? And this is where the skill part comes in. Don't be doing fast eccentric rep speeds if you haven't got good skill, okay? Serious, right? If you haven't got good skill, stick with slow, steady eccentric rep speeds because that allows you to learn the coordination. So one of the aspects of being an intermediate is you're coordinated enough to be able to do this stuff, okay? So a fast eccentric rep speed increases force, therefore increases the stimulus for more load on the bar and more neural adaptation for strength. Okay? So again, swap between the 2. You can do 1 month of slow eccentric rep speed, more fatiguing, probably less reps, okay, in a given set for the same weight. Whereas if you go for a faster eccentric rep speed, as long as everything else is good, okay, safety, skill, and so on and so forth, right? You should find that the weight on the bar goes up and or the reps that you are able to do within a set also go up, okay? So that's a good thing to also change. So then something you can do is then tie all of these together because there are certain exercises that make more sense to go to failure on because they're safer, and there are some exercises it makes more sense to not go to failure on because they're more technical and the load involved is far higher. Plus, there are certain exercises where it makes more sense to change the eccentric speed, okay? So you can actually then go, right, I'm going to have an exercise block here, A, where these exercises make more sense to fail on, they're safer, they do certain aspects to the muscle of isolation, so on and so forth, and therefore I can make more sense to maybe slow the eccentric rep speed down, because that's more of a mechanical tension thing, combining those. And then you can do another exercise block where you have different exercises where you don't go to failure and you focus on the intent of eccentric rep speed to be faster, to create stimulus for more load and therefore more strength. Swapping between those two, if you get it right, I think progress keeps on going. Okay? I hope that helps.